Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we will be learning about multi-factor authentication with the demo. So let's jump into that. If you just go to Microsoft Azure portal and Azure Active Directory, within this you have multi-factor authentication specific configurations which can be configured from the portal as for the server-side configuration. Let's jump into that. One would be the security, and you have here the options for configuring the multi-factor authentication as well as the conditional access. For now, we are working with multi-factor authentication. In the upcoming demos, we will be working with conditional access. So click on multi-factor authentication. So when you click on it, the new uh, blade will be opening up here. In this, you have two different settings. One is the settings that are offered from Microsoft Azure portal side MFA service, and other one would be the MFA server specific. Let's understand more about the server side configuration or portal side configuration. The first one would be the lockout. So this specific setting is related to the MFA server specific, not the MFA as a service. So when I say that, this should actually join in this blade inside the manage MFA server, but it was added here either way. So if a user account is trying to locked out multiple times with a temporary failed pin attempts with the pin only configuration, then this gets locked out. So we can configure that specific configuration here with respect to manage MFA server specific. And coming back to the block or unblock users, if you want to add any of the user to be blocked for some time, mostly it would be 90 days. Then you can add user accounts with the UPN ID, and the reason for that also, for example, the user lost the phone and he might be traveling, and he might need to go and get a new corporate approved device. Till that time we can block the access. So in that situations we can enable this. Again, except the account lockout, all these settings are MFA service specific from Microsoft Azure portal, and these are MFA service specific. And fraud alerts, if you are trying to configure the specific configuration, it will allow users to report a fraud phone call or maybe a trigger event automatically to us, so that we can check on that and we can automatically block if you want. For example, a user might be traveling and he got some authentication call, automated call from Microsoft multi-factor authentication, and when he left the call, it is asking him to press um, pound key to authenticate, whereas the user itself, he or she itself not actually initiated any of the actions. So that could be a fraud. So it has an option to report with a specific number by entering. Let's say by default it is 0, but if you want to enter any other number, you can initiate that number here. But mostly these configuration we don't do it because sometimes users might respond as a accidentally also. So we need to make sure that when we configure automatically block the users for the reported fraud issues, we should be very sure. Otherwise we don't need to configure this specific setting. At the same time, if the users are fully educated on this specific multi-factor authentication, we can enable this. And for the notifications part, here you can send an email notifications for all these configurations. And OAuth tokens we can configure here, or you can upload those specific tokens if at all you have any of the hardware tokens that needs to be integrated with your MFA, you can do that. And phone call settings also can be configured within this. When you enable phone call settings, you have an option to enter the user specific number where the users will receive the phone call from that number, so that that number will be displayed for the users, so that users knows that, hey, this number is coming from my multi-factor authentication number. Instead of every time users receive a different phone number, you can configure the specific setting from the MFA caller ID option. And also you can configure your greetings in different methods. Let's say for the retry or fraud report or extension prompt or authentication successful. For all that, you can apply a different greetings on your own format. That way the users will be more familiar and they know that this specific multi-factor authentication request is coming from your own company. That way they would be knowing that. So these files are MP3 for your customized language and customized um, settings. For example, authentication successful, as I said, greeting pin or retry pin. For all that, you can record your own voice so that users knows that these voices are coming from their own MFA server, and that way here it will be listed all that values. So coming back to the providers, these providers are no more used within Microsoft Azure as part of the licensing they have already disabled in 2018. Now let's jump into the other configuration that is very critical and important. You see here we talked about the server level, that is the Azure service level configuration. Now it's a time to understand about user specific or specific settings as well as the additional settings that we can configure for multi-factor authentication for end users challenges. So the first one would be the, if you just go to the getting started, click on additional cloud-based MFA settings. This will take to another web page where you have two options. If you see here, this will if you just click on here users, that will show all your users where you can enable or you can reforce the users to use the MFA, or you can disable or enable the MFA configurations. And other one would be the service specific settings. So I would like to first go to the service settings and then come back to the users. So under service settings here within this, you have the app passwords. App passwords are a kind of 16 digit a lengthy random password which will generate only one time. When I say one time, if you don't save it, you don't get that password what was that old password. Okay, so once the password was generated, that password can be used for older version of applications. So we call it as a non-native application. Let's say Office 2010 or some other applications which are not compatible for the multi-factor authentications. So basically the app passwords are for not supported applications. When I say not supported, for the multi-factor authentication mechanism, not supported applications, we can use the app passwords. So which are mostly nobody wants to use these app passwords. But if you are interested to enable for the all the users, you would be having option here to create or enable the configuration for the app passwords. But normally you can generate, when I say you can, and users can generate on their own the app passwords. But if you want to disable them for everyone, you can use this specific setting. So that's the server level setting. And also for the trusted IPs, so these IPs, it doesn't ask your sub within these provided subnets. It's not going to ask for the trusted, it's a whitelisted one, so it's not going to ask you multi-factor authentication request for any of these. So it can be your intranet or maybe users which you trust, maybe from your customer network or from your client network. These are the trusted IP subnets. And next thing is the verification options for the end users. So as I said earlier, when you're trying to enable here under users, for any of these users you have an option to configure whether these configuration for the enabling the multi-factor for end users or the cell phone to call. That means they are going to receive a phone call from Microsoft multi-factor authentication server, or you want to send a text message from the multi-factor authentication server. So we talked about two methods now. Other one would be the notification through mobile app. So Authenticator application, a application that must be installed on your mobile, then you get a notification. Other one would be the a verification code, that is every 30 seconds it's going to change for you a random code. A 6-digit code would be randomly generated on your app. So you need to install Authenticator app, and that app will generate random code every time, very similar to your RSA token. If at all you worked with RSA tokens, similar one, it would be coming up this. So that would be generated from the mobile app, or if you are using any third-party hardware token, that also supported. And also the last one is remembering multi-factor authentication. Let's say you have it's challenged for the end users to accept or validate their multi-factor authentication as the second layer and on a device, let's say on an iPad device, and and you want to remember that um, challenge maybe for 14 days. That means within that 14 days it's not going to ask you again and again to validate multi-factor authentication, so users not going to be frustrated more. So if you want that kind of configuration to be done, you have here. So these are the global settings. So we talked about two things in the global. The one would be the here the settings under Azure portal within the Active Directory security MFA. Under settings we did talk about the Azure service custom settings. And also from the getting started, we also talked about additional cloud MFA settings, where we talked about service settings, which are the global actually. Right now I'm going to talk about user specific, how to enable for the users multi-factor authentication. As we talked, for the global admins, it's by default enable. You can also enable from here. We also have an option to filter with the specific user sign-in. For example, you can filter based on the billing admins or global admins or password admins, including the service admins. So for example, if I try to search for the global admins, I can look at here two different user accounts or the global admins. I can straightforward from here, I can either enable or I can do the similar settings um, to the configuration for required selected users to provide contact details again, or maybe deleting the existing application passwords and regenerate that, and also restoring the multi-factor authentication on all remembered devices. So all these options I can do it. So you have here one more filter that can be used, enable or disable the specific set of Active Directory groups. So let's take one of the user. You see here, you can search for the users from here, like maybe Dan example. There is a user called Dan, so it's coming like Dan specific users who wherever we have the display name or somewhere DN word. So you see here multi-factor authentication is currently disabled. Let's say if I want to enable, I'll simply have to select and click on enable, or you can go and choose the manage user settings, and here you can say that required selected users to provide contact methods again. That means if the user is already enabled multi-factor authentication, that means when we enable the multi-factor authentication, he's going to register with maybe a phone number to get the phone call or a SMS code on his mobile number. So technically we are asking user to register. So if you want to reinforce that number to be again validate or to re-register or supply that mobile number or contact details, we are going to ask here. And the second option is delete all existing app passwords generated by selected users. So this is like when, as I said, when we sign up with the multi-factor authentication from the end user point of view, he's going to actually get a automated app password also will be generated for him. If he don't save it, that's lost. But if that user was saved that specific app password, and he might be using maybe in a script, or maybe in a Outlook 10 kind of old legacy applications which doesn't support multi-factor authentication. In that situation, we can delete those users because we don't know those are compromised, these passwords or something like that. You can delete all that existing passwords, so that it's gonna ask for the users to regenerate since that password is not working. So users can regenerate that password. And other one would be the restore multi-factor authentication on all remembered devices. So this is just for the restoration purpose. But these are the three settings you have when you click on manage user setting. So let's enable for a user called Daniel Craig as the enable. So think that when I click on enable, it's gonna ask me to enable multi-factor authentication for the user. So I clicked on OK, so it got successful and close. You see here the status is changed for Daniel Craig as enabled. So now as a next step, if that specific user log in to access any of the information, he will be challenged to register multi-factor authentication. You don't simply enable like this. You do the communication with your end users, and so that they know and they are aware of that, hey, we are going to enable the multi-factor authentication, and they have to supply these information. When I say these information, these are the challenging information which we have given here, right? These are the methods which we enable for the end users to validate. So let's jump into as a login as a Craig account and see what happens. I'll just try to log in to in a private mode with that user account, which is portal.azure.com with Daniel Craig account, and see what happens. Click on next with the user ID. You see here it says that more information is required. Once I enter the user ID and password, it is asking me to me to supply more information. You see here your organization needs more information to keep your account secure. So all I have to do is I don't have any other option other than clicking next. So if I click on next, I get this window as the end user. So this is the end user experience, and it says that hey, authentication is you're gonna use your phone mobile authentication or mobile app authentication. If you're using mobile app, that means you need to install an application within your mobile, and then you need to choose the receive notification verification or use verification code. So this is nothing but you get a code, random code, every time it changes on your on your authenticated application, and this is a push notification comes from authenticated application. So any of them we need to use it. Other one would be the over the phone. So you need to enter here that specific user's phone number. For example, if it is coming from US, US number to be entered so that the users can log in with that specific number. That means they are going to get a phone call to that specific number. See, send me a code by text, so they're going to get the code. So the reason being, you see here we did actually did not selected the call to phone. If we have selected this, we could have get here even another method as the phone call also. So these are the options. So let me show how to install and configure these specific settings. So I'm going to mirror my phone. I will be mirroring my phone here so that you can see what I'm trying to do here. I'll just go to Play Store and try to install an application called Microsoft Authenticator, and this application is will help us to get that codes and notifications within this app. So I'm just opening this app now. When you open the Authenticator app, it will ask you to choose to click on add account. So that means you would get the options when you click on add account. Let me click on here. You get here option for personal account or the office or the school account. So in my case, it's definitely the work account or school account. So we click on that. It's gonna scan with the work or school account. So once a scanning is success, it's randomly added this code here, as well as the link. If you see in the background of the link, which provides, either you can enter manually also if you have a problem with the camera to scan it, and post to that, it will automatically add Daniel Craig account here. You see here Daniel Craig account has been added, and this circles with 30 seconds timeline of every time this 6-digit code will change all the time. So I need to enter that code when the user prompts for the multi-factor authentication. So that's how it's going to work for us. So I'm going to enter the code to log in further by looking into here. Once in my phone it is showing as the Daniel Craig account, I can click on next button so that it will actually validate in the background to check out. It's gonna checking basically with the Azure multi-factor service in the background, and later point gonna ask one more time the code to be entered. You see here it has been set it up now. As a next step, if I click on next, it's gonna ask me to enter the code which is visible on my mobile phone in the Microsoft Authenticator application. So let me click on next button. That would actually take it to for the verification code, and it's gonna ask me to enter the code as we discussed. So I'm gonna enter here the code. Once I enter the code, I can click on verify. That's gonna verify my identity. And a last step would be to, in case if I lose my app, it's gonna give me an option to call on my phone, or maybe just to text that message. So I can choose my country and the phone number here, so that I would be getting, in case if I failed in my attempt, or I lost, maybe I have lost somehow my phone example, or something like that. In that situation, I can enter here mobile number and click on next. That would actually validate. These are the application password. This is where it's gonna ask us to save the passwords. If you want to create a password, you can just go to this specific window, or to this tab. I'll just go here to create a password, app password. It's going to just sign in, and a code I need to enter on my phone. So once I enter the code, it's going to verify, and it's going to sign in. Once it is signed in, this is where the initial password it got created, and I don't know the password because it was not shown. So you can delete this password, initial password, that's app password, and you can click on create. This will create a new password. So this is just to identify, for example, if you configure for Apple Mail specific this password. So click on next. That would actually create the specific password. So this password becomes a application password. That means when you're configuring Apple Mail on your device, you can give this password, and the username remains our daniel.craig at whatever the domain name. So in this case, I'll just have to save and post to the saving. I cannot see this password one more time. I can't see that. See, all I have to do is either have to delete and recreate, or regenerate the password. I don't have any other option. This is where the app specific passwords can be generated. You see here, this is for Daniel Craig account. And once this is done, you can click on done button. That would take to the actual URL. So in this case, portal.azure.com. So you see here, I'm able to access my applications. Similarly, if I have any of the applications were published, I should be able to open and see my applications that are listed on my user account. In this case, Azure applications has been publish looks like, which is not working. Maybe it's not published properly, all that, but that's how it's going to work. So this specific demo is more on MFA specific, and we have completed almost all the configuration. Let's jump to the server specific configuration and see what we have tried so far. So I'm just going back to the page where we have configured. So we understood that these are the settings can be configured for MFA service specific, and these are for the MFA server specific. However, MFA server specific are no more used because they are almost depreciated, and they are offering specific plugins to use even for on-premises to integrate one solution as the MFA service. I hope this entire session is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.